people come from churches where the pastor was the center of attention and everything had to come through the pastor. And especially if you come from that kind of background where people couldn't hardly go to the bathroom without the pastor's permission. But not so in these perilous times. Not so in this house. If I could be real personal with you, I want to see each and every one of you come forth in what God put inside of you. That's what means more to me than anything. Part of the reason why we don't have, and I'm telling you now with no intention, we don't have the pastoral celebrations. Y'all know the pastoral anniversary, the pastoral offering. You know, the thing that most dear to me as a pastor, the thing that in the pastoral appreciation, that's the word I'm looking for. You know what pastoral appreciation to me is? To sit here and watch the people of God go forth and what he put inside of you. To me, that's pastoral success. Where I could come in here and I could sit down, not say a word, and watch this body go forth. Everything from folks walking in the door, being greeted warmly, to somebody else other than me and Carol standing up leading the praise and worship. Someone else sharing a word. Because it's not the Chris and Carol Green show. All during the week that everyone doesn't have, if you have a crisis in your life, you don't have to feel like, I got to call Pastor Chris. You can just call the first person that God brings into your heart. And know that I'm going to get a word, that I'm going to get help. That's body ministry. That's what's in your pastor's heart. That's what's in my heart. And in these perilous times, it's even more so. Part of my orientation for ministry, in fact, I don't say part, my orientation for ministry really isn't the typical American church paradigm. My family got saved because some missionaries came into the black community in St. Louis. I mean ghetto black. And these white people came door to door, and they held what they call good news clubs, 5-day clubs, where they would gather the children in the neighborhood and meet in somebody's house, and they would tell stories about Jesus. The meeting would last about 45 minutes. They teach us some songs, then tell a story about Jesus. And they would use this way before the technology we got today, they would use, anybody familiar with flannel boards, and put up the little pictures and figurines, and they would stick to the board, and it had a little background on it, maybe mountains and trees, and they would stick up these little figures and tell the story. Well, for us, that was a big deal, because, I mean, we didn't have anything other than cartoons to watch. We didn't have any special animation and special effects to compete with, so that was fine. But they would tell these little stories. And one year, my mom, who had gotten saved years before, but she became a part of this group, and she let them come into our house so that all the kids in the neighborhood could come and hear the word. And so she allowed her own children to sit in those meetings. That's how my older brother, you guys have met him, Bishop, and the brother who's passed away now, that's how they got saved. Little white lady came into the neighborhood and told the story of Jesus. When she asked who wanted to give their heart to the Lord, my two brothers jumped up and came up along with the rest of the little crowd of little kids in our house. So my orientation for ministry is not even inside of a church building. So I'm telling you that so you can understand your pastor a little bit more. That's why part of the reason why we're so comfortable being here in this setting, because my orientation for ministry is not even inside of a church. I didn't even get saved inside of a church. I got saved in the living room in my home. And year after year, my parents would take us to hear the stories of missionaries who had gone in other cities in America, who had gone overseas into China and various nations in Africa and in the Caribbean. And they come back with the stories and show the slideshow. They didn't have PowerPoints, they actually had slides. Remember those? With the machine that goes, yeah, that. And that was my orientation, as they would tell the stories about how they would go with their whole families. And some of them had very sad stories of losing a husband or a wife or children in those endeavors. And so my whole orientation for ministry never had anything to do with somebody standing up in front of a pulpit, preaching, amassing crowds of people, amassing large amounts of money, and all the stuff that we see here in America today. It was always about going where nobody else wants to go, going into places where nobody can go, but going because God told you to go. And it had nothing to do with being popular and being well known. It had to do with being faithful and taking what God had given you, what gift that God had given you, and let him use you to speak to somebody else about his love. Could it be that the Lord allowed that same little boy who got saved in his own house and heard the stories of the missionaries, could it be that that's the kind of ministry that God wanted him to be raised up in and have an orientation for, so that he would send him some 40 years later to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to a city that he knew would be locked up and stymied and crushed by religion, to start a ministry with his wife and his sons where it's got nothing to do with all that stuff. And that he knew that there would be some people that he had gifted, that God had gifted, who was also tired of religion and all that stuff, and were looking to be used by God. That's what this is about. And I believe that in these perilous times, the Lord's told me just to kind of stay on this for a while, about how to respond in perilous times and allow the gift to stir up the gift that's within you, and then to give you opportunity to have it come forth.